This had to be re-recorded because my microphone was an absolute douchebag. Hey peeps, Pinklot16 here on a video that I might as well do now since it's kinda been a week and I feel that some things need to be addressed. Now I'm not trying to prove that Octolinks will never come or, Octolinks are fake and are never going to be real, because the recent Octolink leak, which has been around for at least a week, has escalated enough in my honest opinion, and I don't want to look like that fishy fisher guy who isn't really official, trying to debunk it cause lol. I was there on the stream when this originally was broadcast. With Etika, yes. So I feel that it has gone on long enough, and I feel that people need an explanation as to what's been going on. I will go over each of the pictures and each of the events that transpired in them. Now, I'm not some unofficial person, because if you see here, I am a mod on the thing. This was a screenshot from NWPlayer123's Twitch page. And I also happen to have the account in my friends list as an NNID. So please, I know what I'm talking about. I also happen to be in the two videos that I will link in the description. If one of them is taken down, most likely, then I am sorry, but I was in those videos and I know what I am talking about. So anyway, I am going to commentate on these pictures people seem to realize is true. So anyway, let's begin. Now the whole thing started because it was from a stream that NW Player started on the 21st of September. The thing is though, this tweet is the thing that started said stream. It was initially meant to start out as a Splatfest stream. Because before, I've seen this happen when the Transformers Splatfest happened, when they sided with Decepticons, and then even earlier when they were siding with Marshmallows. So this initially started as just a Splatfest stream. Just a regular old Splatfest stream with the usual model swap that usually happens. Now, this was in a tweet that was on NW's Twitter earlier, but in case you missed it, or, just want to hear it now, I might as well just explain how it happens. There are two methods that NW uses to patch the Octolinks into the game. The first method is the model swap method, which basically replaces all the Inkling girls with the Octolink females. This method is client side, so basically everybody on their sides sees themselves as Inklings, and they also see NW as an Inkling. But they never have to know that they were Octolings or that NW was an Octoling. I'm just going to use gender neutral pronouns. But this method, the model swap method, is client side and is much safer than the second option, for which I'll explain in a moment. But this is a method that is primarily used when NW goes online to be an Octoling. The second method is the player ID method. I usually swap this to be model ID, player ID, but I'm still talking about the same thing. This method happens to involve stuff already in the game's code. You know how you pick a girl or a boy Inkling on the Inkling gender select screen? You are basically switching between 0 and 1 on girl and boy respectively. There is a 0-2 value that corresponds to the female Octoling. There's nothing for the male Octoling, or if there even will be a male Octoling. But 0-2 corresponds to the Octoling. And this is in all saves in all games, in all regions. This means that you could put the Octoling online and everyone will see you. It has all the needed functionality, the eyes, basically everything from the model swap, just in its own value. It has the eyes, it has the angry mouth, it has the vocals, it has all the needed functionality except for one thing, which is why it's not safe to use it online. It crashes the Inkopolis Plaza. I don't know why it does this. Apparently it has some missing data, not animations or something, apparently. Apparently it's just missing data that is needed for it to work in the Inkopolis Plaza. And thus it soft locks your save and renders it completely unusable until a Splatfest. And because of that, the model ID method is not safe to use online. It is a method that can be used, but generally NW prefers to use the first method for obvious reasons. To not go around crashing people's plazas the moment they see an Octoling in online multiplayer. So that is how NW gets the Octolings into the game. Now, knowing this, we will continue to talk about the pictures surrounding the Octolings. This picture is the first thing I see commonly used to describe the Octolings as being playable. However, it runs by the same method that I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, the model swap method. David, in actuality here, is actually an Inkling girl, just replaced by a model on client side. On David's side, he is actually an Inkling girl. Yeah. The model swap just changes all the Inkling girls to Octoling females. So in actuality, you are really seeing an Inkling girl here. This was coupled with two other pictures on a tweet that said RIP Squad 2 to 4 AM. Like I initially said, this was meant to be a Splatfest stream. This and the two other pictures were actually meant to mourn the three people who were actually amazing in NW's group in the Art vs Science Splatfest. So really, these aren't proving anything at all. This is just using the same method that has been used for a while, either it has been forgotten, or it has been used in preference, or for some other reason that I'm totally unaware of. But the Octolinks being playable are not proved by this thing here. This is in fact just a warning for the people who were good in NW's team before the laggy Splatfest disconnection completely scattered them across, the randomized group searching. So really, this doesn't prove anything. This picture was coupled with a tweet that said, "Welcome to the Octo Research Lab. We're a branch of the Squid Research Lab that studies all things Octarian." And it also happens to have the suit that the Nintendo devs were donning when the original global test fire was around in May. And you can see the obvious reason why it is not in the game at this moment, the giant flag. This is unofficial gear that was merged with the game after some programming along with the gear that you got for pre-ordering the game. And in fact, this was just hacked from the game's code to parody a Nintendo Direct by putting the gear on in the shooting range and just showing the Octolings off. This is, once again, the model swap. Most of this is the model swap because of the fact that this is the normal save. Now we'll talk about that in a moment, in later pictures. But this gear is unwearable in the game. Apparently it doesn't have most of the gear or things needed to work. I mean, it works. You can see it's working here, but like, it doesn't have apparently proper icons or names. And of course, the giant flag is probably just making it data that just sits in your game's files and never gets touched. So don't worry. This was really just parodying a Nintendo Direct because that's how they normally sound, in that kind of way of trying to appeal to the younger crowd trying to sound as if they're modernized. But yes, this was merely used for parody and is not proving the Octolinks are playable, because this is just the same model swap method that I've been talking about for a good 10 minutes. Finally, I can improvise again! Well, if you realize I had to re-record the first couple of bits. Anyway, doesn't matter. This is coupled with a tweet that says, Octolings are the counterpart to the Inklings you know and love. They're sneaky little suckers, so watch out. Notice how that sounds? Once again, like a Nintendo Direct. Just like the Splatoon Direct back in May, where we were originally dumped a whole lot of info on what the game would be like when it would come out later that month. This is just proving to you that what the Octoling gear with the seaweed, the what would be known in game as elite Octolinks, that they are in fact able to be worn as gear and could potentially be a thing. They could also not be, since the goggles you get as gear don't have them. But this was just to describe the Octolings in, once again, a joke way. During the stream, during these couple of screenshots, NW was also pausing for a very long period of time whilst taking these pictures and formulating the tweet until the next thing happened. It was made as a mere joke, just as a little joke to see how they would possibly announce Octolings if they even did. Because data in the game makes it likely so, and I will discuss this as well. Don't you worry about that. There is a tweet that comes without a picture that says, there is next to zero doubt in my mind that there is going to be a direct like this in October when 3.0.0 launches. Which is basically saying that this is all a joke. This was all a joke parodying what a Nintendo Direct would sound like. And it was basically all a joke. Now to continue on with the pictures. I'm going to switch these two pictures while I'm explaining. But these two pictures were coupled with the tweet that said, because Octolings are a different species, they also have their own humanoid form and octoform. Eureka indeed! Once again, continuing the joke. In the model swap method, the first method I discussed, NW is able to easily switch the methods over from each thing. So basically, the model of the octoform will switch with the squid one, and also the same thing applies with the Inkling girl with the humanoid form. Now, as to why the Octoling looks normal here, well, I don't know. It probably took a bit of work, since, it wants it to be this way. But this is in recon mode, in case you aren't realizing. There is an exit button in the bottom right corner. There is a timer in the top left, and it looks like a TERT4 except for the exit button. This is recon mode. This is not online, of course, because there's no ink and there's no other players, but I was on the stream, and also we were paused for a long period of time on these two things. I wondered why NW went into the thing, to realize it was just more of the same joke. I actually commented on the tweet saying that it sounded hilariously accurate to what a Nintendo Direct would sound like. I noticed that it was the same method that it was being used all of the other times as well. So anyway, let's move on to the next batch of pictures. This one. This picture is practically the most juicy tidbit of evidence I've ever found on the internet. Okay, evidence. This is actually a model swap. However, the Inkling girl in this one is apparently different from the other models. However, it is being used with a different model swap method that still is replacing the Octoling. The name was given to probably the Inkling Girl, and as you can see, the gear being warm and the gear being held, the splatter shot, and the gear being worn, the white tee, the pink trainers, and the orange hair, tentacle hair, call it that, basically given away that it is the Inkling Girl model swapped. The tweet comes in a thing that says, in the update later today, you'll be able to play as an Octoling. Huzzah! To commemorate this, we're releasing a second batch of amiibo. This includes your very own Octoling amiibo, as well as a Callie and Marie amiibo. Notice that only the Octoling is shown, and not Callie and Marie. The only reason Callie and Marie was stated was because across the internet, this thing has been requested for a long period of time. And knowing this would be in the data, even though it's not, would be very thrilling and, as expected, would spike the hype for those things up to ridiculous degrees. So in actuality, there is no data for Callie and Marie amiibo. Sad face. I am very sad at that too. Don't worry about that. And no Octoling. The Octoling, if they were to even release it, would probably look like an Octoling in single player, with the red tentacle hair and the armor and the goggles, most likely. If not with the goggles, then with the same eye texture as seen here. But the other stuff would probably still be pretty relevant, considering that they use the Inkling Girl with the orange and the general stuff that they use in the official artwork for the Inkling Girl and boy as they do for their amiibo. So it would be the same thing for the Octoling. I say that as I look at my amiibo of the Inkling Girl and the Inkling Boy. But this is in fact just a model swap. As another picture on a news website will show, it shows the reward for completing what would be an Inkling Girl mission, since the requirement is a charger, and the reward is 100 since the original reward has already been acquired. And it says the reward won't be as rad for challenges you've beat, which in the American version would probably be the exact same thing the Inkling Girl would say if you've already completed the mission. So anyway, let's move on to the next pictures. This is coupled with a tweet that says, Octolings also have their own unique specials too. Take for instance the Kraken. However, if you take note, the Kraken is only being, well, contorted. The Octobones are messing with the Kraken's skeleton supposedly, and thus it is being twisted into an Octo shape, but it is not actually an Octoling. NW posted something in the chat before they were about to do this, noting, let's see how broken this is. Just before they were about to do the Kraken thing. And they were in the testing area testing some of the weapons. So, the Kraken being shown, this Kraken here, is only being contorted by the Octoling bones that happen to be with the model, because if you notice, they're in the same shape as an Octo form would be. I would think that a Kraken would look more Octo-like, myself, honestly, if they were actually to make a Kraken, or if they were to keep this broken thing, that would actually be pretty sweet. But NW did say in the chat, let's see how broken this is, implying that while used in a joke, it was meant to be a double joke. Sort of. This doesn't prove anything. This is just the model being contorted in a way that is unlike the model usually. That doesn't corrupt it or break it. Well, this is sort of its method of corrupting. By twisting in an odd shape. But really, this isn't an actual special. This is just the Kraken being forced to fit within the Octoling's animation pieces, if you want to call it that. It probably has a word. I don't know what it is right now since I'm improving. But anyway, let's move on to the next picture. Now, people keep using this as evidence against me to prove that the Octoling used in these pictures is not in fact a model swap, but is in fact a playable Octoling. This is the player ID method, since you can clearly see in the picture that there is an Inkling girl next to an Octoling, as well as an Inkling boy, all three together. However, in the chat, okay, I'll go back even further. After one of the videos I linked in the description, I made a test account on Splatoon on my Wii U to test any further events that would happen in Splatoon according to this Octoling thing, just in case my Wii U would have a spaz on my save and I would lose everything forever. So I made a test account, and originally I tested this with NW just before Rainmaker was about to come out. Rainmaker the mode. What we wanted to test was if Rainmaker was already in the data of the game and we could test it out before it officially released worldwide for everybody. So essentially, we tested this out and it loaded Rainmaker on NW's end, but on my end it loaded Tower Control. I kept the account in case of any future Octoling trials, and in the chat, on the day of the stream, NW asked me, do you want to splat? Because apparently NW said something that NW may have fixed something to do with the player ID method that may have prevented the plaza crashes, but NW still wanted to test with me to make sure. NW uses a sort of separate account for this, if you will. Uses a separate account called, I'm not going to mention its NNID because then you'll start spamming it with requests to add when it is really only meant to test with me. This method was used with me to test the Octolings as they would be playable. Now, because it is Art Champion in the top right, I myself am confused as to whether it is NW's actual save just being used in Plaza, or if it is that other save I'm talking about. But that other save is only used when we are testing the Octoling trial things. So yes, this is the player ID method, and this does raise the chances of them being playable. Yes, it does. However, I will explain in a moment. This doesn't really prove all that much since it's once again using the same methods we have used for a while. So all the pictures from NW's Twitch feed are over, I might as well go over some of the ones I encountered on the websites, specifically the Coalition as it's called. Now after these pictures were tweeted, Etika joined the stream. Etika's real account. NW noticed this and then started streaming some unreleased weapons to the public because the public happened to follow because Etika's presence was on the stream and he alerted everybody to the stream. And of course you could expect a lot of spam from people who were just acting crazy because Etika was on the chat in the stream, on a Splatoon stream, proving things that were potentially going to be real. The weapons most certainly are going to be real, they're just going to trickle them out as the game goes on. But the Octoling thing was proven only by the tweets, which again are just mostly model swaps with the one player ID swap. So once again, some of this stuff is totally false, and he believed it. He totally believed it. And I was there and I tried to explain things, but with how fast the chat was going, it was impossible to talk to anybody. Even in slow mode, it was almost impossible to talk to anybody. And with 2 inexperienced mods only there, it was very hard to control the chat when people were only talking about the fact that Etika was there. We got up to about 700 viewers that day, and I would believe it was about midday or something when in American time when this was being broadcast. Anyway, I'll go over the coalition pictures now. This was showing off the weapons that weren't being used. The bamboozler wasn't, unreleased, but as you can probably see, if you can't really because the thing is a bit faded, there are weapons there that weren't released at the time, including the Tri-Slosher. They were there earlier in the stream to actually ask a question as to when they would be released, and half of that question was answered a couple of days ago when the Tri-Slosher was officially released to the public. When Etika came onto the stream, everyone followed him, and thus NW thought it would be a good idea to start streaming the unreleased weapons that aren't revealed to the public yet. Everyone fawned over them. The Hydra Splatling especially, considering that it's basically a giant Splatling that has enormous capabilities as a gun. It will be released in the future, and will probably act as like the dynamo rollers of the Splatling class, in my opinion. But the weapon here shown was not unreleased, but it was a picture on the website to prove that Octolings will be playable. However, this is just from the portion when we were streaming the unreleased weapons with the model swap, just going in the shooting range and having some fun just joking around with ink. So there's nothing really of worth here. I don't know what NW was doing in the stream at this time, but NW seemed to like going into the one player mode. And in fact, at one point in the stream, in actually 2 points in the stream, one when there wasn't much viewers and one when there was when there was hundreds of viewers, it could have been 1,000, to face DJ Octoling as DJ Octavio as an Octoling, and everyone reacted because Octolings killing their father, as it's so called. Don't kill your daddy, Octo! Something. I don't know. Everyone reacted as if it was just so bad and it was just a little joke, and the internet being the internet, but this was just showing in the single player. Not much to see here. It's just the Octoling in front of Octavio with the model swap. Nothing to see here. This is the last picture I have before I'll start talking about how Octolings will probably be playable. Now, there is another person in this image, and the Octoling forms have 2 ways. You want to know who that other person is? The orange person? That person is me. That's my test account. That's my test account when we were using to show that the Octolings might be playable. Woohoo! But that was in fact my test account, with NW's sort of test account, because it has a specific and an ID, of which I will not mention in this video because you will go and spam it like nothing else. And I don't trust anybody to not do that. And I don't think anybody would enjoy being spammed with friend requests just to see the Octoling. Oh, no, 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 no. But notice a couple of things. One, me. The orange me. Well, actually, let's go even further back as to how this even started. I was waiting with my gamepad whilst the stream was going on for a very long period of time. I had my gamepad on charge. It was ready to play. And I was waiting to test that Plaza fix if it had happened with my test account. So I was waiting for NW to ask me as to when we could test this out. And NW eventually waited until the very end of the stream to ask me, do you want to test this out? So we did. And thus we started a match together. Everyone was so jealous that I was the one being in NW's thing, although it wasn't really that interesting. It was the day of the Splatfest, just 3 hours before my Splatfest, the Messy vs Tidy Splatfest. And I might as well say that thank you all that were there for paying respects to just a test account. Wow. But I'll explain that. First of all, me, which I was going to talk about anyway. Notice how my Octoform thing looks like a squid. Notice how the tentacles are facing down and what looks like a mustache is on me. That's the model swap. On my end, I was just a level 1 fresh inkling. And by fresh, I mean out of the new blue, totally. Yeah, you get it. I was a noob inkling. I was a noob inkling on my end, and I saw an Octoling on my screen. An Octoform as well. So yes, basically, that there is me as an Octoling in the model swap. Because NW was probably lazy. I was an inkling on my end. Now let's go over NW. NW was using the player ID method. As such, the Octoform you see here is the same Octoform I was seeing on my end. And you're like, whoa! You saw the Octoling! What you've been disproving for the past half an hour is totally false. Yeah. I'm very sorry if I killed all of your ears there, and you get it. So what happened after we were done with this match? Well, we tested the Plaza, and my test account crashed. My test account crashed and died. And NW said in the chat, press F to pay your respects, and because of all of the 700 or something viewers that were there, we got a lot of Fs. For a mere test account. I'm really laughing because it all that respect paid to something that's barely even worth it. And the Splatfest was starting soon, so I could have easily gotten it back. And I did for about a couple of hours. I wanted to test if it did absolutely nothing and the Octoform wouldn't come back, but wouldn't you know it, it came back and crashed my game again. So I've had to restart my save a couple of times. It doesn't matter, it was only a fresh save. I wouldn't have done anything anyway. Wasn't helpful. But yeah, that what you see here is me and NW testing out the Octoling again. Now I don't care if this video goes over my max limit for whatever video happens to be, god darn it. I am now going to discuss how the Octoling could potentially be playable in the future. Oh my god, you've just spent a whole half hour debunking this. Why are you trying to prove they're playable now? Right. Yeah. Listen to me. This wasn't supposed to be an Octoling debunk video. This was just supposed to debunk the leak. Not the Octolings. The leak. There is a difference. Now, one of the videos I have linked in the description is a video made by a guy called Patrick Gillant, or I'm just going to refer to him as Patrick. He recorded a video of 2 matches of him with NW in 2 matches showing the player ID method. Shortly after, which was revealed on Twitter, his save crashed and he could only get his save back when the Transformers Splatfest started up, and thus could purge NW from his save so that he could go in and replace NW with a different Inkling, which would eventually happen after he'd spent a good period of time trying to work out another save in Splatoon. In that video, I'm also in the second match, but why did my Plaza not crash? I'm wearing a Splatfest shirt and it's a grey texture. That happens when another region is having a Splatfest. Yeah, his copy was the American copy, and so is NW's. I own the Australian copy of the game, which uses the European version of the game. Which means that NW is not allowed to come into my Plaza at all at any point during a European Splatfest. Which is why the save worked whilst the European Splatfest was on my test account, because it's the same game. So, because of that, and because of the later purge, since it was back to Inklings and we were just gonna fight because my save is perfectly alright. And my save is perfectly okay and still lives to this day. However, that video that he made proves a couple of things. The Octolings, since they have a value in the player IDs 0, 1, 0, 1 and 2, 2 being Octoling, female, since they have that value, it is very likely for them to be playable, since all that would need to be fixed is just a couple of minor things like making sure there's plaza data, fixing the hat clipping, along with a couple of other things. But they have the vocals, they have an Octoghost, they have an Octoform, they have vocals as far as I could tell, they have wearability of clothes. Name something, it will probably be there. The angry mouth, the eye texture, that they also revealed in official artwork on their Twitter and their Tumblr. They would not program eyes if it was for no reason. They are going to do something with the Octolings at a later date. Maybe make them playable. But we don't know if it's going to be so. Okay? Made that clear? Good. But the fact that they've been making the gradual changes of the eyes and the mouth do make it very clear. And their chances are very high. However, it could also be leftover data for something. We don't know. However, it does seem very likely. Although, we found the data back in August. The player ID method that happened. When that video was filmed, that's when we first found it out. Because of what I said, because it still crashed my Plaza, nothing has changed since when we first found it. So, none of the chances have increased from when we found the player ID method way back in August when we first filmed it. When NW first filmed the first match with Patrick, and then Patrick filmed both matches, with even the one including me. Now I have a couple of pictures of my own that I might as well address for a short while before I end this off. This is me with a model swap, the first method NW uses. This is also seen in the other video I should have posted in the description. This is generally some of the gear I use. Might have changed as of this point in time, but generally this is just me as an Octoling, as the model swap would imply. It's not much to see here, it's just the Octoling. Now as for relating to the stream, here you go. Another thing that they might be playable is because of the model swap, because of how similar they are to the Inkling Girl, this makes them very easy to swap with and become playable. Because of how similar they are, it could be very easy to just implement them as playable characters. They also have in-color capabilities, as well as gear, and generally everything else that encompasses an Inkling. We can end the racism and have Octolings become playable. Anyway, I'll discuss my last two pictures. This is a photo taken with my really cruddy camera, used to show the plaza crashing on my test save. As you can see, the messy and tidy Splatfest was about to begin, since the panel is over there in the top left. What happens when your plaza freezes, you might ask, since you don't want it happening to you, and since this was the first time this happened to me. Basically, you have control of the plaza for a good 2 seconds with the gyro. I almost thought that it didn't crash, but then it freezes on you. It makes a loud noise that beeps, kind of like if a flash card on your DS freezes your game. It will just repeat the sound for a bit and then it will just stop. The Wii U will softlock and you will have to reset. However, this won't break your Wii U, it will only break your Splatoon save. The only reason you have control first up is because it doesn't load all the NPCs until a short while after your Inkling is in the plaza. You don't really notice it, but it's there. You can sometimes see Inklings just appearing in front of you. But yes, this was my plaza when it was frozen. My test plaza. So that's all I have to say about this. This is just a screenshot taken with my very cruddy camera. I couldn't even take a screenshot with Imgur. I only had my camera, which is my actual save, which was completely fine on that day, which was shortly before the Splatfest begun. As you can see, I'm wearing most of my normal gear as you saw in that previous picture, except for the Splatfest shirt, because Splatfest was about to start. But that was my regular save, and I was doing that to prove to everybody that my save was fully functional and totally fine. And will forever be, for a very long period of time, since I am never using it to touch Octolings on their test file saves again. Okay? You were lucky seeing that in that video that one time. So, what's to do with this picture? Well, with the Tri-Slosher preview in the link description below, you see the model swap method being used. Not the model ID, player ID, the model swap with the Inkling Girl. This is just proving on my original save that NW in fact is an Inkling on my side. This was shortly before the Tri-Slosher released. Lots of people in the chat on the general stream seem to ask, can you use these weapons online? And yes, they can be used online, but it's the legality of them that prevents NW from just going all willy-nilly with them online. People would notice that an unreleased weapon is being used and would most likely make a big fit about it because of the internet. So basically, all of this weapon data is already in all of your games already. The patches that get released are literally just unlock keys to unlock the data in the game. If the player ID method was being used, I wouldn't even make it past the center circle. I wouldn't even be able to make it to Nikki because it would just freeze my plaza. That's why so many people were in that video, because all it is a weapon swap. No one was an Octoling, everyone was an Inkling, except for the Octoling model swap. And in fact, NW was an Inkling, as seen here, on my actual save, taken with Imgur. So that is what the model ID, the model swap looks like on other people's ends. I wouldn't even have a plaza, and I wouldn't even be able to take this screenshot had I, been in the way of the player ID swap. So anyway, that is all the evidence that I have to provide that the Octoling leak is fake, but the Octolings may be indeed real, possibly as a thing for playability sometime in the future, most likely, 95% chance. So, see y'all, have a good day, peace, and hopefully this information will have educated you a bit onto what really happened behind the scenes.